How well do you get along with your siblings and your cousins? And what does that have to do with building a construction company that spans 130 years and 5 generations? We answer those questions and others on today's episode of Construction Genius. Hi, this is Eric, and it is my privilege and pleasure to welcome George, Jeannie, Laura, Dan, Richard, and Sean Cullen onto the show. We're going to have a great time in this unique episode of Construction Genius. I've never had 6 guests on at the same time, and we have a tremendous time discussing why the Cullens have been successful in building and sustaining a construction company over 130 years and 5 generations. So enjoy my chat. Feel free to share it with other people. Reach out to the Cullens on their website, jpcullen.com. And thank you for listening to Construction Genius. This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership. Your ability to plan, improvise, and schedule construction operations on each of these jobs has materially expedited this urgent war work and made it possible to use these facilities to shorten the war and return servicemen to civilian life promptly. Each project was greatly expanded after construction was started, and your ability to expand and expedite operations was of great value to the government. I wish at this time to express my appreciation of the cooperation offered and the efficient work done by your company. In my opinion, the manner in which the work was accomplished was exceptional in view of the many war restrictions that had to be overcome. You are to be commended for the satisfactory completion of these varied jobs, and I extend to all members of your organization my thanks and sincere appreciation for their cooperation in this vital war program. Welcome to Construction Genius. That was a commendation from Colonel Weinart of the War Department on November 7th, 1945, to Mark Cullen. Now, I'm welcoming here the 4th and the 5th generation of J.P. Cullen leadership to the podcast. Jeannie, can you tell me a little bit about Mark Cullen?
Oh, Eric, that was pretty powerful listening to that quote. And I know it's from our book, The Cullen Way, and it speaks to the rich history and how long our company has been in position to serve our clients and our people. We're celebrating our 130th year. I'm definitely going to flip it to my brother, George, who's our family historian and can expand on that quote, and Mark, and share a little bit about the history of our company.
Yeah, thanks for having me again, Eric, and I'm really excited to have this conversation. And what's neat about that letter is Mark's son, JP. So Mark was our 2nd generation owner of the company. Mm-hmm. And Mark's son, JP, was a World War II combat veteran. Yes. So all the while we were building that facility, our grandpa, the 3rd generation owner of JP Cullen, was in Europe. He was a machine gunner. So it's just pretty special to think about our company was able to build that building while he was fighting for his country in Europe. And the company was founded in 1892 by J.P. Cullen, who was a son of an Irish immigrant. He passed it on to his son, Mark Cullen, who the letter was written to. And Mark Cullen passed it on to his son, another J.P. And J.P. passed it on to our 4th generation owners, which is Richard Cullen and Mark and David Cullen. And Mark and David Cullen just transitioned the business to their children in the business, now our 5th generation. And the other thing I have to mention, that facility where we worked in 1945, we actually went back there a couple years ago, and it's been repurposed to test rockets for a private company. So not only were we there in 1945, we were back there a couple years ago in the 2010. So just pretty special when you think to be able to span that long.
Hey, George.
Yeah, go ahead, Rich.
If I can, actually, my brother Mark and I actually worked a summer up at that plant many years ago. And it was a very interesting summer, very heavy construction and concrete, and some really interesting old construction guys that I got to work with and be around, and very memorable. I'll never forget it. But Mark and I actually worked in that plant.
That's tremendous. Just as we're kicking off here, Jeannie, can you introduce everyone that's on the interview here today, please?
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Like George said, thanks for having us. And I'll start with George. George Cullen, he's our co-president alongside me, and he's my younger brother. He oversees our industrial and our Milwaukee division. And then going across the Zoom meeting, we have Sean Cullen, who's in business development in our Milwaukee market and is pursuing work in healthcare, commercial, education, higher ed, and K-12. And he also lives in Milwaukee, and he's George and I's cousin. Next up is Dan Cullen, and he is Sean's older brother, and he leads our yard and shop operations, which is housed in our Janesville office, about 45 minutes south of Madison, Wisconsin. And Dan and like I mentioned, Dan and Sean are brothers, and their dad, David, just transitioned to his next phase of life as they don't like to use the word retired. No. So we use things like transitioned or step back. And then up next is Laura Cullen. She is George and I's sister, and she leads our corporate training and development and is very heavily focused on hiring and recruitment, which I'm sure, like everybody across the country, we're looking for great people and looking to add to our team. And Laura's integral in that, and then also continuing the education for our team members. Last but not least, we have Uncle Richard Cullen, and he is the fourth generation family member that is sticking on with us in the fifth generation, and he is our VP of field operations. And Richard has grown up through the field and knows our field operations. He prides himself and is incredible. He knows all our guys' names. He can walk onto men and women. Sometimes I say guys, but it's men and women. He knows their names. He walks up to them, shakes their hand, has instilled that in the next generation of how critical it is to have a pulse of the field, have your boots on the ground, because that's what makes us successful. And then me, Jeannie Cullen Schultz, and I, as I mentioned, I'm a co-president alongside George, and I oversee our healthcare and Janesville divisions and office out of Madison.
Excellent. Well, everyone, welcome to the show. I'm tremendously excited to have you all on the show because I think one of the fascinating things about having a multi-generational company, and specifically I'm thinking about in the United States, is that as we trace the various generations of the Cullens, we get a real sense of the history of the United States and how it's a history of immigrants who come from difficult circumstances, establish themselves, and really grow and thrive and put down roots in a very profound way. And I think that's something that is underlying everything that we're talking about as we're going through the interview process today. I just would like to start by asking you guys, and Jeannie, feel free to distribute this question. We've got an uncle, we've got cousins, we've got siblings. How do you guys handle the intergenerational aspect of the ownership of the business?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think Richard should go first from his perspective as being a member of the fourth generation that's seen a lot over the time. And then Dan, if you want to speak for the fifth generation group, that'd be great.
Well, I want to thank Eric for having us on your show. I really appreciate it. And the question, can you repeat the question for me?
Yeah, so I mean, you're the uncle, right? I mean, you're the old head in the room, and you've known these guys since they were pooping their diapers.
Yeah, I do.
Right? So how do you guys handle that intergenerational aspect of ownership?
It's a lot of fun. I was, like I said, I came up through the field, and I have deep respect for my partners now. They are a bright bunch that are fun to be with, fun to interact with. We have our moments, but we're just kind of in an embryonic stage because this has just started in January where we have become partners. And so, if you ask me this 5 years from now, I'd probably give you a better answer. But right now, we're interacting well. My nieces and nephews are very bright individuals, much smarter than I ever was. And so I lean on them. I look towards them for their help and their insight to help me with my business and the things I do, because they have very great knowledge of construction already because they grew up in it. And it goes really well. It's been a real good transition and we've gotten along really well. So I've enjoyed it.
Let me ask you this, Richard. I'm interested. Yeah. Can you think of a specific time with any of the other folks here in our discussion when your perspective on them shifted from, this is a child or this is a teenager, and it shifted to this is an adult. This is someone who is a serious person, someone who I can even learn from or can make a contribution to this business?
You bet. I could say something about all of them, but I will pick George and Jeannie because they're our co-presidents. And they, along with myself, meet from time to time. And I really, really look towards them for their advice, even though I'm quite a bit older than them. But I look towards them for their advice and their insight and their intellect. And the other thing that they do, and George is probably the best at this, is calm me down. I am a very high-strung Irishman, and I can get on with the best of them. And George seems to have just a calming air about him that helps me and makes me think of things that in a perspective I'm not looking at, because I can be kind of stubborn and be set in my ways, and he helps me get out of that. I appreciate that.
It's really interesting. Jeannie, as we think about this intergenerational aspect, what has been your experience in terms of the dynamics and the challenges associated with that?
Yeah, Richard, thanks for the kind words. I think one thing, and I was going to have George or Dan touch on it, but I will. One thing we work with a family business consultant, and it's something the fourth generation set up 20 plus years ago. I remember they brought us all together when none of us were in the business. Maybe some had done an internship, some were planning to do a whole bunch of different things. And they set the tone of, if you're going to come back to the family business, you're going to come to the family business for the right reasons. You're going to go earn your stripes somewhere else. You're going to get experience so that when you come back, again, your heart's in it and you're in it for the right reasons. And oh, by the way, you're going to probably learn a lot of stuff working elsewhere that you can bring back. And then from there, we set up, we met quarterly as a fifth generation. And at first, there wasn't a lot to talk about, but it was about building relationships, getting to know each other better as we had gone off to college and spent time apart. And we knew that if we built that foundation in those relationships to have tough conversations, they're going to come in a family business, and they have, and we've worked through them with each other. But we have a regular cadence, and now Richard is now we're partners with Richard. So now he comes to our, what we used to call our G5 meetings, and now we call them shareholder meetings. For a while, they were G4, G5 meetings. So just having that regular cadence and being able to have that opportunity to talk to one another, not only as cousins or siblings, but also as business partners and challenge one another.
That's great. Dan, let me bring you back in here and give us a little bit of your perspective, Dan, on the intergenerational dynamic.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having us on, Eric, and appreciate all the kind words everyone has said to date. One thing that was key for us is we were cousins, and we all grew up in the same neighborhood. We were literally 2 blocks away growing up. So we knew each other from a very early age, and we did a lot of things together. We went to our grandpas together. We threw the football around, played in the ravine. We had a lot of different interaction at a young age. And I think that really helped our relationships. When we came into the business, we already knew who we were. We kind of understood each person's personality, their strengths and their weaknesses. And then growing up, Richard, Mark, and David, they put an emphasis on making sure that the family got together. And when we got together, we had fun. It was always go out and learn how to drive the boat or throw the football, or, there was always something that we were doing. And I've always thought that Richard, he was someone that you could call if you needed anything growing up. I had a lot of times and when I, needed to call on him and I could confide in him. And so those relationships just happened organically, but we put work into them at a very young age. And I think that's key, especially if we look into future generations, to establish those as soon as you can.
It's really interesting because what you're speaking to there is the importance of getting to know each other. And that really brings strength to any relationship, to any business. And I guess that would be the advantage of having a family business, is that if you've grown up together and stuck together, which is often the challenge for many families, sticking together, you have that opportunity to get to know each other and to find out your strengths and your weaknesses. I'm curious about this sense of place, though, because there's a phrase that I took from the Cullen book, that Janesville is the town that J.P. Cullen built. Jeannie, I'd like you to just to speak to or to distribute this question. Give me an idea of this sense of place that the company has in the geographic areas that you've served over the years.
Yeah, again, a nice, great quote and great question. And I, again, will probably turn to our two historians, Richard and George, to field this one. So, George, you want to go first?
Sure. Well, we're definitely a modest company, and that book was something just to celebrate what we've done as a company, and very specifically what our people have done. Because yes, we've got the Cullens on the phone right now, but this company has been built by people who are not Cullens, along with the Cullens, just great names throughout the history of our company. And those roots are really deep here in Janesville, which is a town of about 65,000 people. And our company was founded here in 1892. And we have a long history of building here. Specifically, in 1908, we built the Sampson Tractor Factory, which then turned into a General Motors, one of the third largest General Motors manufacturing plant. And we built roughly 3 million square feet of manufacturing space in that facility. So in Janesville, it's pretty neat. And I used to do it as a kid, drive around with my grandpa, and he could kind of point out the things that we were able to accomplish as a company in this community, in Madison, throughout the state of Wisconsin. So that history runs really deep.
It's interesting you say that, because it's so easy to be inflated by our success and to be, to get a fat head, for want of a better word. But you guys pride yourselves on being a company of what you call regular people. What do you mean by that? I'm here on the West Coast. West Coast people tend to, get a little cocky, get a little arrogant, and all that kind of stuff. But you all are from the Midwest, and you really strike me with that sort of Midwest flavor. Give me a little bit of, how do you guys stay with that regular people mentality?
Rich?
Yeah, Jeannie, I'd like to, I'm going to answer that question, Eric, but on the other question, as it relates to building Janesville, George touched on General Motors. I won't go further into that, but we also built, and I don't know if this is something that people around the country know of anymore, but we built the Parker Pen Company, which was a very popular pen it's no longer in Janesville, but we started that. The actual Parkers was a family in Janesville that I actually grew up with along with my brothers. And that's another part of building Janesville. The neat thing too is today, before this meeting, I was on a phone call. We were talking about some work coming up in some of the schools in Janesville. And I asked, how many schools are we? We're doing some refurbishment and some remodeling and some security in some of the schools. And we're going to be working at 8 schools in and around Janesville for the summer. And I asked the superintendent, how many schools are we working on? And he said, we're working on 8. And as he rattled them off, we built 7 of the 8 of those schools. So It's kind of neat that we're going back and building or refurbishing and remodeling schools that my grandfather built, certainly my dad built, and it just really makes you prideful for what we've done with Janesville. And then what was it? Help me with, I'm old, so you got to help me with the last other question.
It's just sorry, Eric. No, you're good. It's just a sense of being regular people, that sense of humility that helps to sustain the company.
Yep. A couple things that will come out of my head right away is we are a family-owned business, and we treat our people in the field and in the offices like they're our family.
Yeah.
And we repeat that over and over again. I was in a meeting yesterday with my concrete division group, and we were talking about mental wellness in construction, which is something that people don't talk about, but there's a lot of trouble out in the construction industry as it relates to mental wellness. And what I started with my speech or whatever, my talk was, you are our family. Your family are our family. We want to take care of you. Another thing that's I think is really cool, as George said, we're very modest. We have a very modest office in Janesville. That's home office. And that office is modest for a reason. And the reason that we have a very modest office is we want our field people with mud on their boots to know they can come into that office at any time and walk up and down those hallways, even if they got mud on their boots, they're welcome. I look around Madison, Wisconsin, and I see some of our competitors, and their buildings are like Taj Mahals. And I'll bet you not one field person is even allowed in their buildings. And that's just part of what we are. We're family. And everybody that works for us is our family.
That's excellent. That's excellent.
Lo, can you touch on it? Because you're spending a lot of time really focused on our culture and the hiring for the right fit. And when you think about JP Cullen and the humbleness and the work hard mentality.
Absolutely. Something that I stood up to grab is, I don't know if you can see this, but it's our mission, our vision, and our values and our beliefs. But our values is being loyal, accountable, integrity driven, humility, and leadership. And when we're interviewing new candidates to join the JP Cullen team, I always make a point to discuss those with them and give them, I ask them to think about those values and make sure that they resonate with them and align with what they're looking for. Because when we're hiring for somebody to join JP Cullen, like our mission is to identify, hire, and train the best people to serve our customers. So it's just so important to us to find the right fit, that JP Cullen's going to be a right fit for them and that they're going to be a right fit for JP Cullen. So those values need to align with the people that we're interviewing.
Let me ask you, Laura, because this is very important. Most construction companies, they put their values on their websites and all that kind of stuff. One of the things I like to do with my clients when I'm doing an initial workshop is I'll actually put a slide up with people's values, the company's values, and I'll ask them, do you guys know whose values these are? And many times people won't know, right? So what I'm curious, Laura, from your perspective, particularly as you're involved in this hiring, is how do you know when someone isn't in alignment with your values while you're interviewing them?
So it's been 2 years ago, we have a strategic initiative. And on that strategic initiative, it's all about our mission statement. And we had a subcommittee fall under the higher part of our mission statement. Mm-hmm. And we rewrote our interview questions. And those interview questions are targeted at those values and the attributes that we know make up a good JP Cullen team member. So we have boxes that we're listening to check off while they're explaining their answer. And we went so far to interview about 60 of our team members here at JP Cullen to kind of get that baseline of what we're trying to hear to know that it will be a good culture fit. But at the same time, understanding we also want diversity of thought. So not necessarily around the values, we want those to stick to JP Cullen, but one of our beliefs too is to do things better, process improve. So if somebody has a different opinion and has a good reason around that, we're always looking for that too.
That's interesting though. So you consciously went out and interviewed people that you would say, these are A players in our business, and filtered that through into your interview process.
Correct.
Excellent. That's excellent. Let me ask you, Sean, you're in charge of business development. Go ahead.
Business development Milwaukee. George is in charge of business development for the company.
Beautiful. Business development Milwaukee. That's all good. So my question to you is, back in the day, right, we didn't have computers, we didn't have email, we didn't have social media, right? So if you're going to do business with people, first, you're going to go belly to belly. You're maybe going to pick up the phone. You might shoot someone a fax, but there was a lot more human interaction. As a young person yourself, relatively speaking, how have you seen the importance for maintaining those personal relationships? How do you go about doing that so that people understand that construction is a personal type industry and is built by those personal relationships?
That's an excellent question. And there's kind of twofold to that. And part of that is going into that process of us pursuing a project, pursuing a client. We have a pretty rigorous process that we've got to make sure that we're hitting certain steps so that we're going through the next step to make sure that we're employing our resources properly. And so part of that is me being the business development person, getting them involved with those people, getting those upfront meetings, asking the right questions, doing the back research on the company, seeing if it really is a cultural fit and if they're looking for a true partnership and not just looking for a builder. There's stuff that you've got to go beyond. Now, so we've got a lot of process that we go in there, and that's a matter of myself getting to know them, talking to other people in the industry and the network to get some background research on them to see if they are a really true partner that they want to get with us. Now, the other kind of difficulty of that is when they're a first client, it's always hard to go through to really build that trust and that relationship. You typically go through maybe some rough patches, or you go through a project. Hey, we've got to figure this problem out, figure this. I know you're going to be that responsible partner that we're looking for. So that's a lot easier to do when you're going through a project to build that relationship with someone. Now, up front, like I was saying, that's where it becomes a lot more difficult. And it's really just a matter of picking up the phone, setting up those meetings, talking about stuff that isn't necessarily project or work specific. You want to get to know them as a person to really understand what makes them tick, what makes that company tick, what makes that individual tick, so you can get to know them better before going after a project.
Okay, that's excellent. Let me go back to you here, Jeannie. I'm fascinated by the family dynamic because, I got 5 kids and, they spend, I don't know, maybe 80% of their time throwing blows, if not physically, at least verbally. You know what I'm saying? How do you guys handle sibling disagreements? Because, ultimately, people say you got to separate the personal from the professional, but let's get real, right? We're human beings, and we probably don't do that as well as we think we do. But tell me what your strategies are for handling those arguments and those disagreements.
Yeah, give me the tough question. So first, did I hear you say you have 5 kids?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Yeah, so do I. We're nuts, but they're all blessings, but we're busy. So, I'll speak to my relationship with George and Laura, and I can give probably a number of examples, but first and foremost, we're brothers and sisters, and we love each other, and anything that happens at work or personally that we disagree, we got to come out of that in the right time, seeing eye to eye and being brothers and sisters. So with Laura, we're also best friends and spend a lot of time together. And sometimes we approach things differently and maybe squabble a little bit, but because we grew up on the basketball court having arguments or butting heads, we know how to get over it pretty quickly. With George, I think the example I'd give, and we're in a unique situation where George and I are co-presidents, and we've been incredibly blessed to be in this position. Rewind a couple of years ago when we went through the interview process, which was pretty rigorous, and they put us through the paces, which I would too, because we're going to lead a $450 million operation that's been around for 130 years. So, at the time, George and I were both going for it individually, and we thought this was a one-man job and one of us was going to get the position. And I'm not going to call it an argument, but at the end, they said, you guys were very, very close. And we think we as a company are going to be better if you do this together. And George was pretty upset about that. And he expressed his emotion. And I was upset too, but the difference between George and I is he's a little bit more, he expresses his emotion a little bit more. He's quicker to make a decision and move forward. I'm more of a processor. And I remember I was like, shoot, George is really mad. This is going to be tough. And I remember we walked out and we both were, concerned that how are we going to make this work? We just went through all that and this is where we ended up. But we went to our favorite lunch spot. We had lunch and we said, let the dust settle a little bit, calm our emotions, and then let's figure out how we can make this work together. And we did that. And that was awesome because it, again, shows how George and I can work together. We are going to disagree on things. Sometimes I have to tell him I need more than 24 hours to respond to an email or get him an answer. And sometimes he tells me, Jeannie, I need an answer now. So I wouldn't call them arguments because, again, as Dan alluded to, we have a great family history of being brothers and sisters and cousins and uncles and nieces and nephews. So there's squabbles that we get through, and there haven't been any real arguments. I don't know, guys, if you feel like I'm missing a blatant argument, but that's how I would respond to that, Eric.
That's interesting. And what I'm interested in is when JP, the second JP, passed the business on to Mark and David, I got a sense that there was a similar sort of co-leadership of the business at the time. Did I get that right? Or is it at all analogous with the co-presidency with the 5th generation? What similarities, differences there?
Rich, I'll let you answer just from a high level. JP passed the business equally on to his 3 children, which were David, Mark, and Richard. And Mark was the president for a length of time, and then David became a president after Mark. So, Rich, maybe want to touch on the history and the transition from JP to you guys and your roles and how you guys were set up.
Sure. It was back in the 80s, and it's interesting.
The 80s were awesome, by the way.
Yeah. Well, it's all on how you look at it. But the interesting thing is, when he gave the business to us, our business was doing $30 million worth of work per year. We now put in place $50 million of work in 1 month.
Yeah.
So that just shows you the difference. But back to the question, at that time, I was kind of out trying to find myself, if you will, while Mark and David finished college. So they were the first two owners. I was not an owner right away. And believe it or not, as sophisticated as it was to get to the co-presidents, and I was part of the panel to choose, Eric, it was literally a flip of a coin in my dad's office who was going to be president, honest to God. And Mark won the flip, so Mark became the president. And then I came in later. Again, I came up through the field. And so I came in later and brought that field
expertise.
Thank you. That's not the word, but that'll work. But I brought that to the group. And I just real quickly on disagreements in that, when it was Mark, Dave, and Rich, we certainly had our disagreements. And we were, all three of us, I would categorize as alpha, double to triple A personalities, but also very competitive, as my new partners are.
Yeah.
But the one thing that kept us together, we were brothers, and we had a business to run. And so I will tell you, literally, when we were in some meetings, literally, we went toe to toe. And I don't mean that figuratively. We went physically toe to toe.
Yeah.
But nothing ever happened. We finally settled down, and we never, ever, Eric, voted on anything in our whole career, which I think is really cool. We never had to bring something to a vote. We got close, but we always ended up, just like Jeannie said, we're brothers. And I used to it always seemed like I'd sit in the middle of the conference room, and Dave would be on one end, Mark would be on the other end. I swear to God, I felt like I was watching a tennis match. I'd go, Mark would say something, then I'd look at Dave would say something, and Mark would say something. And then the two of them would look at me and go, what do you think? As a younger brother, but it all was good. And I'm looking forward to the same relationship with the next generation, that you're cousins, but you're brothers and sisters. And always remember that, and don't ever walk out of a meeting without resolving things, and try not to bring things to a vote.
So that's interesting. I saw Jeannie, Laura, I noticed you shaking your head, nodding when we were talking, the word vote came up. Jeannie, if you'd like to address that or distribute that idea of voting in the context of having 5 people in the room who are involved in leadership, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, is it 6 or 5?
6.
Okay,
6. Yep.
6. Excellent. Excuse me. Got to get my numbers right. Tell me a little bit about that. What's your perspective on the whole voting issue in terms of decision making?
Yep. Well, I'm going to flip this one down to Janesville with Dan and George, because they are working alongside Rich with setting up our boards as we move forward. And they've been very integral in getting the process and the expectations laid out. So,
Yeah.
Dan, George?
I would just start with the ability to transition this business requires a ton of credit to Mark, David, and Richard. They had about a 20-year process to get us to where we are today, which is just so tremendous. And it set us up for success. So this planning process was well thought out. It had very good steps, and it was something that wasn't something that just came out of nowhere. They were very thoughtful about it. So that type of planning has been transitioned to us and has been ingrained into us. And I'm proud of our cousin group and uncle that we, as 6 individuals, came together and we came up with our own list of items. These are the things that if we had to vote, would be a vote and would have to be decided at that level of the ownership.
Okay.
These are the things that the owners have empowered Jeannie and I to make decisions on. So we're very thoughtful about what would be something, what type of topic would require a vote. But I also foresee, like Richard, David, and Mark were able to do, that we really probably never would need to get there because we do a lot of consensus buildings. We do what we can to get everybody's input and make sure that we have full alignment before moving forward on something. And we're just doing a good job of that. And I'm proud of our group for being able to do it.
If you don't mind sharing, what are some examples of things that you would vote on? What are some of the things that would come to the vote?
Yeah. So really things that would have an impact on the balance sheet. So a significant investment would be something that would come down to a vote. That would be an example.
Excellent. Okay. And let me ask you, I know you, Richard, you were speaking to this. When you go from the 1980s and the volume of work you were doing then to the volume of work you are doing now, the company obviously has radically transformed. The culture has probably stayed the same or very similar, but there's a big difference in who you are now as a company. What was the catalyst for that transformation, that journey that you've been on from a smaller, more, locally based construction company to a regionally based company that's larger in your volume? Can you talk about that a little bit, please?
Well, it's been a long journey. I don't know if there's just one catalyst, but when Mark and Dave took over, again, Mark was the president. David then became, I don't know what his title was, but he was the business development guy. And we had a consultant that really helped us to figure out how you go and start marketing this business, how you go and start building this business. And he called it, earning the work. And so David was very instrumental in going out, getting, just kind of like Sean was talking about, getting with clients, getting to know them. And we just started, it wasn't as planned out as it is now,
Sure.
But we just started to get work. And then we also started the different divisions, which we have a masonry division, the Milwaukee division, healthcare division, industrial division. Am I missing anything, guys?
Janesville.
And Janesville division. And so that all started with Mark, Dave, and Rich. And that brought us to, we became larger because of the different divisions. So we're a self-performed contractor and we do bid work and we do negotiated work, but we also, our industrial group will go out, and they have grown a lot, and they'll go out and do outhouse work in all different places in the United States. And that's grown us quite a bit. So it's been a long process, but it really started, in my mind, it really started with David learning how to be a good business developer. And Dave's just got a charisma to him. When he walks in the room, he's always got a smile on his face. And so he was perfect. And Sean's the same way. He was perfect at helping grow the company. And then we're just one of the best in the field. I'm sorry, but I think we can perform almost anybody in the field. We've got great people in the field. We need more. If anyone's listening that wants to come to work in Wisconsin, because we got the work, but we've got the greatest people in the country, as far as I'm concerned, as people in the field putting our work in place.
That's well, Eric, if you don't mind, that's well said, Rich. I think I just want to call attention to a couple points. One is Rich really mentioned the focus on the field. So as a self-performing general contractor in CM, we have what we sometimes call a conservative growth rate because we need to be best in class in the field in order to be successful. And you can only grow so fast there. So we would rather have the conservative growth and knock it out of the park day in and day out for our clients and keep that steady workforce than chase growth. The second thing I would say is we've been very fortunate to have some very large flagship projects about once every 7 to 10 years that really allowed us to grow as a company and give new opportunities. I'm sitting looking across from the beautiful state capitol here in Madison. We touched every square inch of that about probably 20 years ago now, Rich. It's been a little.
We were in the Capitol for 11 years. It was
11 years straight, which is amazing. You think about the Camp Randall Stadium where the Badgers play and is so integral to who we are as a state of Wisconsin. We've done 3 major projects over the last 20 years there, again, help grow. And then there's medical records company out in Verona, about 20 minutes from where I'm sitting, that has had growth similar to what you see in California, Epic Systems, and we've been their partner for 30 years. So that has, again, allowed us to grow as a company, which we're so fortunate. And then the last thing we're talking about now is we have so many talented people. We need to be looking for strategic opportunities to grow, whether it's starting a new division, growing a division, so those people can continue to grow and develop and be challenged. So it's everything Richard said, and I just wanted to share those additional thoughts as we do talk about growth, but smart, conservative growth.
Excellent. Let me talk to the younger generation here and just be as transparent as you feel comfortable. What is it that you guys bring to the table that has really benefited Cullen? What's unique about the younger generation's perspectives and abilities that have helped to grow the company and move it forward?
Dan, you want to go first?
Sure.
Yeah, okay.
Can you hear me okay here? Well,
Yep.
One thing, Generation 5 is the first generation to work outside of the business as a requirement.
Mm-hmm.
I think Richard worked elsewhere, possibly early on, but it was, and Richard, you can speak to this. It was different when we came into the business. It was a requirement. You had to go work somewhere else for at least 3 to 5 years. You've got to earn a degree if you're going to go through the management route the office route. If you're going to go the field route, you have to earn an apprenticeship. So we have a work employment policy that was put in place like in 1997 or 1998. So to your question about what we bring differently to the company, I'm going to say the first thing is that outside experience. And every single one of us, in addition to that, on this call, we all went to school outside of the state of Wisconsin, and dang near, I think all of us worked outside of the state of Wisconsin. So we really do have some outside perspective, different geographies, different trades. Some of us have worked for mechanical contractors or refrigeration, architects. Laura worked with an architect. Sean worked with the historic restoration. I worked with a traditional general contractor. So I'm going to say that is the one thing that we've brought. And then just the other thing, which is amazing, is pretty much everyone, I think, has got an extremely acute business acumen, just sharp business. Everyone on this call, whether they went to school for, they paid attention growing up, there's just a business pedigree that this generation, you can tell. And it's not a knock on the previous generations. It's just as we evolve with education and things like that, it just seems like the business side of it is really sharp in this generation.
Anyone else want to speak to that? I appreciate that. Was very good, Dan.
Thank you, Eric.
I think Danny kind of hit on it, but part of it is we've got, as our generation, 5 very unique, different brains, and we've been able to find where each one of our strengths lay as an ownership group, opposed to having a smaller ownership group. I'm seeing we've got 5 owners that we can say, all right, these are the experts, or we can bounce things off of. To Danny's point there, we've got the business acumen, but you can really focus different operations within the industry. You can look at different sectors in the industry, in the marketplace, and be able to say, all right, we can really focus on that and make that your pride, your passion, to bring to the larger ownership group, to make it a more cohesive ownership group that is smart in all aspects of the business.
Excellent. I'd like to speak for a moment. I know it's early days, but to Generation 6, because Generation 6 is in the mix, so to speak. I mean, they are alive. What are you guys doing differently with Generation 6 that maybe Generation 4 or 5 didn't experience? What changes are you making as you're thinking about the next generation?
George, you want to go?
Yeah, it's a great question. My oldest is just about to be 5, so it's a little tough to think about differently. But what I do think is important to convey is, I like to say this to our new hires, is our job, my job specifically, is to be a steward of the entrepreneurship of my great-great-grandfather, who had the courage to start this business.
Yeah.
So I think this was instilled to us. I know I'm going to instill it to our children, is just the responsibility of that and the impact that this company can make in the communities where we live by employing people with great jobs. So it's not going to be different. It's going to be the same thing of just instilling how much pride there is in this business and making sure they all understand that it's something that needs to be taken seriously, and you need to be prepared if you're going to join the business.
Excellent. Anyone else want to speak to that?
From a personal standpoint, and it's busy right now. I mentioned I have 5 kids. George has 3. Dan has 4, Laura has 2, Sean has 2. So that's a lot of kids. I can't even add it up that quickly. But we are trying as best we can to be intentional about getting never know if it's second cousins or first cousins once removed, but all the 6th generation together. And then also our spouses together as well to build that personal connection that we were able to have because we grew up together as cousins and we all went to the same school. And then Rich, you should touch on Peyton because there is one more 6th generation that's just about to start his sophomore year of college, or 5th generation, sorry. He just finished up his freshman year at University of Wisconsin-Platteville, and he's working in the field for us for his 2nd summer in a row. So do you want to touch on Peyton?
Sure, I will. Can I go back just a little bit, if you don't mind, of when I was growing up and how my dad handled Mark, Dave, and I as it related to the business. Would that be okay?
Oh, dude, hit it. I'd love to hear it.
All right. Well, it was not, we were never exposed as young children to the business. So he never pushed the business on us. I can always remember him saying, you don't have to come into the business. But I think as time went on, I can remember we used to have a company airplane because we did a lot of work in Iowa. And I can remember he must have had a method to his madness because I remember him as we were probably more like in middle school and that, putting us in the plane and going and visiting some of the jobs in Iowa. And, so I think silently and a little quieter, he was nudging us towards the business, but he never did what this generation's going to do, which I fully commend. And I don't know that I'll be able to look forward to it, but I think it's the right thing to do. And then as far as I have 2 daughters that are not in the business, that are Jeannie, George, and everyone's age. And then I have a younger son. He's 19, going on 25, but a good young man. He's going to school in Platteville, Wisconsin, which is a really, really good construction school. And he just finished his freshman year, as Jeannie said. He's doing really well there and likes it a lot. He did a youth apprenticeship when he was going to high school. So you have school hours and work hours that you have to have so many to become a youth apprentice. And he liked that so much. He now is going to work for us this year during the summer months as an apprentice, a carpenter apprentice. And he loves his passion right now. I think I must have rubbed off on him because his passion is concrete. And that's kind of where my world came from. But he's a good kid. And the neat thing too is his cousins involve him and in the business, and he's allowed to participate in our meetings. When he's at school, of course, he's busy at school, but I really thank them for allowing him in that way. And I know Peyton, that's my son's name, he enjoys that also.
Excellent. So let's just wrap up. You guys have been very generous with your time here. I do want to just ask one question that I think is really important to reflect on as you look to G6. And again, I know it's really early days, but I get a sense from the way that you guys were describing, Dan, the way you were describing the cousin interactions, that there was a lot of time spent together. And we know that, that with newer generations that are digital natives, right? We no longer have that blended generation where you spent some time away from your phones and some time on your phone. Now we have these digital natives. What are you guys doing as parents to intentionally bring the kids together, so to speak, so that those relationships, those deep relationships can be built early?
Yeah, Danny, I saw Gigi, your oldest, is all over Instagram these days.
She's official now. So it's a big step.
Eric, Dan, I'll just touch on our side and then you touch on yours. From ours, George, Laura, and I all live 10 minutes apart. Actually, George and Laura happen to be next door neighbors now. So we're very close in proximity. So we get together very frequently, whether it's a Saturday morning, get the kids to the park, or a birthday party in the afternoon. I would say we're together at least 2 or 3 times a month intentionally with our kids. So that's been great, and continuing to look for opportunities to get them in front of all Dan and Sean's kids as well. And it'll be easier when we don't have so many car seats and packing toys and naps and things like that. But there's definitely intentionality of that. Dan, you want to cover your side?
Yeah, agreed. We have a charter statement that we read at every one of our meetings. And part of that is ingrained in passing on to the next generation, the same legacy that was passed on to us. So Jeannie's right. Our kids are young, but I think as they get older, we are going to build into our social calendars. I know for a fact, probably twice a year where everyone gets together, even though we're a little further apart, just to get to know everyone, just to be social and let it be organic. I don't think for me, my 4 kids were growing up in the Waukesha area, which is not Janesville. Janesville, as we touched on earlier, has got a lot of legacy with JP Cullen. So it's going to be interesting to see how my kids grow up without really having that connection to the city of Janesville and that connection to this company and that legacy. They're well aware of it and they're very proud of it, but it's going to be different for them growing up in a different city. So I'm available to them if they want to ask questions about it, but my approach is just going to be, they can do whatever they want as long as they're happy and let it be organic. They'll have the opportunity if they want, and we'll just kind of take things from there.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, I really appreciate your guys' time. It's been tremendously helpful. I do have one vital question, Jeannie, that I want to ask you specifically. And Laura, I think you can pile in on this one as well. MJ or Giannis?
Oh gosh, that's hard. So Michael Jordan, well, it's sort of hard, not really. Michael Jordan, hands down, greatest ever was, and his impact on the world. Michael Jordan. Giannis is pretty incredible, but I'm taking MJ.
But shouldn't Giannis get a little more run from you guys specifically? Because I know Wisconsin, you hold your championships very dearly, and Giannis brought the championship to town.
He did. His impact on Milwaukee and the state of Wisconsin is pretty incredible. You gave us a no-win situation here, Eric.
I know.
I'm a Jordan fanatic. I used to collect Jordans and still kind of do.
Eric, let me better phrase that for you. How about Giannis or LeBron or Giannis or Kobe?
Yeah. That's easier, but I got to ask the tough questions. You know what I'm saying?
I'll tell you what, I'm not a huge NBA fan, but when I watch that man play basketball, I wouldn't want to be anywhere near the lane when he's coming for the basket. He is an animal, animal.
He is a big guy. That's true.
Wow.
Well, guys, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
I know that the audience will really get a sense of the family dynamic and the importance of the legacy that you guys have built and that you're looking to carry on. I think it's tremendously significant that construction companies specifically are able to do this because what you guys do is local and it's physical and it sustains over a long period of time. So we're not just producing some software that may be used for a while and then goes away, but it's something that sticks for generations. And I think the fact that you guys have built the generational company and have a generational impact in the area that you're living in has a tremendous positive impact on those communities. So I want to commend you guys for that and also commend you for sticking together through all the family challenges and really committing to making sure that it's something that goes forward into the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us, guys. And I look forward to talking to you guys again soon.
Thank you.
Take care.
All right. Thank you.
All righty. I really enjoyed that interview with the Cullens. Thank you for listening today. You can tell they like each other, and that's encouraging. Succession planning is a challenge, and if it's something that you're giving some consideration to, reach out to me on my website, www.constructiongenius.com/contact. And if you'd like some help with the frameworks that I use for succession planning with my clients, put in your details and I'll contact you within 24 hours and we can discuss how I can be of some assistance. Thank you again for listening to Construction Genius and have a terrific day.